She didn't realize that if some way that customer didn't want to pay me exactly by the end of the month for 3 straight months, that I would probably be in bankruptcy. And so that was the start of, you're an entrepreneur, you're probably a really good builder, estimator, or whatever, but that means nothing, right? Having cash on hand, cash is king. You guys hear this. I'm sure you've heard it from numerous entrepreneurs. That was the fright of a year going through a cash turmoil process and saying, I'm going to hoard cash as much as I can as I grow, and wait for the rainy day for some really great things to happen within the company and build up our balance sheet and build up our bonding. And it's happened because we've gone from, $1 million to $500 million in bonding in a very, very short, in 8 years in public contracting.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Jed Richard, founder and CEO of Richard, a company he's transformed into a leader in the construction innovation and infrastructure solutions. Jed is a former U.S. Army Ranger and seasoned U.S. Department of State Building Division veteran. He established Richard in 2014 to build and solve the world's greatest challenges. And over that last 10 years, he's developed a unique general contracting model emphasizing rapid execution, innovation, and collaboration. Jed's efforts have not only scaled Richard across 16 states with a workforce over 100, but he's also earned the company tons of prestigious recognition. Richard's landed on the Crain's Chicago's Fast 50 for 3 consecutive years, achieved Inc. 2024 Best Workplaces for Construction in Illinois, and Jed was honored with the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award for the Midwest, which he's going to nationals in a couple weeks here. So big deal. That's just a testament to his leadership and the company's outstanding culture. With Richard's commitment to excellence and a people-centered approach, Jed has set a new benchmark in construction, balancing exceptional growth with workplace culture and drives innovation and purpose-driven work. And with all that said, Jed, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
That's a mouthful, Justin. That's fantastic.
I know.
Thank you for the introduction. Very gracious. It's awesome to be on Building Scale with you guys. I think this has been a conversation we're supposed to have maybe 30 times or so. Canceling on multiple times. We wanted to scale a little bit more before we had the conversation, have this cool little podcast room of ours. But thank you so much. You guys have a great podcast. Happy to be on this.
Yeah, no, we loved your story when we first talked 2 years ago. It was already amazing, and it has only gotten more amazing in that time. New brand, all kinds of new stuff, building out more team, building out more just jobs and stuff. So before we dive deep into today, tell us a little bit of the backstory. Obviously, I gave a quick synopsis of that, but like, how did it start? Where did you start?
Yeah, so I think it started in my house in Cheshire, Connecticut. So I grew up in a family of dirt diggers. My grandfather, so Grandpa Richard, owned Suburban Excavators in town. They were the second biggest construction company in this small farm town, Cheshire, Connecticut. The first is Lane Construction. You might know those guys. They're a top 20 builder in the United States. And my grandfather had 5 sons. My father started his own excavation business away from his dad, and so did the 4 other uncles. So they learned really quickly. Yeah, I think they learned really quickly that they can't work together as a family, and they want to be their own their own man and go off and try to solve things. So imagine essentially 6 companies trying to fight for the same piece of business in a 25,000 person town. So 5 years old.
It's like a comedy.
It was huge. Well, the comedy gets better because I grew up in my great-grandparents' house. My dad and my mom, as they started this business, they had $43,000 to buy this house. It was about 1,200 square feet. And for the next 15 years of my life, the room right next door to my bedroom was our office. So imagine dirt digger, excavators, truck drivers, you name it, funneling through our tiny little kitchen into the house next to our bedroom as I'm 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as I'm growing adolescence, getting woken up at like 6 a.m. on Saturday because they're digging and pouring concrete and doing all this stuff on the weekend. So I grew up in a house of chaos with spoils pits in my backyard. It was 3 acres. There was a dump truck or an excavator. There was for erosion and soil control and all the hay bales and SWIP stuff. That was, there's a greenhouse in my backyard that had that. So I grew up in the business. From the subcontractor side, seeing what really smart blue collar folks were doing. And I think it kind of started there. And, seeing everything underground. So I was an athlete, 2-sport athlete, and being a short-lived 2-sport athlete when I went to college, hockey and baseball. So my family let me go towards those aspirations. But when I wasn't playing that in the summer, we were in landscape crews, or I was putting pavers down, or I was on the roller. I remember one time OSHA showed up. I was like 7 years old on a roller with a hard hat on. At my elementary school on a Saturday, I'm like trying to hide off the roller. I'm like, this might be a bad situation. But when you see everything underground, and I mean, building box culverts and utilities. When I was a kid, I was always enthralled with like, what does the vertical nature of construction look like? And so I transitioned. I went to a boarding school. I went to West Point, became an Army officer. Fought and served in Afghanistan a bunch of times. And when I decided that I wanted to go back into building, I did go back to my parents' company for about 2 minutes and said, you know what? I want to be a builder. Turned my resume to one of the largest builders in the country. And I was working for them 2 weeks later. I was fortunate enough to work for their federal department. So not only was I building commercial type buildings, but I was learning how to build these sophisticated structures for our war fighters around the world at the highest stage and the highest level at 29 years old. And that kind of started the process of me becoming a builder and then having thoughts about starting my own company.
Wow. At 29, having those type of opportunities, geez. I mean,
it was better than getting shot at in Afghanistan after 3 tours. So I figure.
Thank you for that advice. I feel it's very important.
No, so the company was Walsh Group, Walsh Construction, Archer Western Contractors. I had 2 or 3 mentors at that company that taught me a lot, from pre-construction and value engineering of really unique structures. To operating out in the field. I had the chance to be on like the 2012, actually it wasn't, it ended up being 2012 United States Army Corps of Engineers large project of the year. It was a $212 million design build job at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is fascinating. And then, I was fortunate enough to help start, I wrote the business plan, at the time when that was about 32, maybe 33 years old at the time. Walsh had been in Canada and the United States only, and I authored this plan for them to go global, building embassies and classified construction programs, around the world, protecting our war fighters and our quiet service members all over the place. So Matt and Dan Walsh, the owners of the company, said yes to that plan with their sons Danny Jr. And Sean, and we were off and running. And it allowed us we won our first embassy job that we ever bid on, which had a ton of learning and postmortem exercises tied to it. But we won the $178 million new U.S. Embassy in Oslo, Norway. So I was there for a little bit with pre-construction teams and, really figuring out how to partner with international large business players. And so I had a lot of great opportunities at Walsh. I was out in the field a bunch. I estimated a bunch. And, eventually I went to go work for another company called Pernix. Pernix bought KBR's federal building and commercial building company, BENK Buildings, which is a big national player right now. And so I was in about 28 to 29 different countries, building embassies, competing on embassies. And, at a certain point, the driver of me wanting to create my own company wasn't necessarily that I thought I could beat them out in profitability. It ended up being about culture. And it ended up being about, what I was missing from the military, 4 or 5 years at West Point, 5 years in the military. So 10 years of my pretty formative 20s. And now I'm my early 30s. And I just felt that the biggest differentiator, and I say it today, is, world-class people, right, that are building those buildings and creating those teams. So that was the precipice about me wanting to start my own thing in 2014 at the end of the year. And, October 2023, 2024, it was just our 10-year anniversary, and we could talk about that back in time. But that's how we got to, being in a farmhouse in Cheshire, Connecticut, working for my parents' company, then working for a couple world-class building companies, both domestically and then internationally. And then saying, hey, there's, I have this veteran status. I could be a veteran builder, and there's something out there to really help people that, I'd fought alongside for several years, especially in Afghanistan. And there's these VA hospitals that I wasn't necessarily tied into and had never walked inside of, except from hearing stories from my two grandfathers that served in World War II, and them saying, hey, there's, I go to get my VA service, and, end of life with both of my grandparents and both my grandfathers that served, and seeing them, passing away at those facilities, and being like, man, there's something really honorable if I'm able to start learning how to build those types of structures through this program. And that's really what started the whole thing in my basement in Northfield, Illinois, and a big piece of what got us to where we're at today.
I imagine, so starting in 2014, I imagine you did not get $100+ million job as your first job. So how did you actually start? Because, there are still prove it moments before you can do jobs like that, right?
Yeah. So, so that was the big job through Walsh that I built, that embassy job, and you learn how to do that. But let's just talk my own business. So the question is, you're asking me is, how do you get to there? Well, and I think one of the things you guys wanted me to discuss is a lot of lessons learned in scalability and those things. So, I try to separate those two, because there's entrepreneurial lessons learned. There's the things that are really focused on self and my mind and vision and strategy and moving forward. And then there's lessons learned with everything else that's way more important than me, which is my team, our resources, the financial resources and wherewithal that we have, right? Our partnerships and our subcontractors that we have. But I will tell you, it was dark in that dungeon in the basement for a while. I remember going to a big prominent bank that said they had a small business program. And I went to the main banker in my town. And I remember, as I wanted to start up the company a few months before I left my last job, and I said, hey, I'm going to start a general contracting company, and I need bank accounts, savings accounts. I'm going to need something called a line of credit. Things that you're not necessarily thinking about when you're operating and working for others. And they're like, Jed, this can be no problem. Come see me when you leave. We do this and we'll get you all set up. And so 3 months later, I leave, I separate. I don't have a W-2 income. I'm a 1099 on my own. The banker leaves that bank. I walk in there. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm starting my own construction company. I walk in, I'm like, all right. And then that line of credit that you're talking about, they're like, oh man, we got a problem here. I'm like, and this is literally the conversation of me sitting across the table with this banker. I'm like, yeah, lay it on me. What's the problem? I could fight through anything. I'm ready to do this, ready to run through a brick wall. And they're like, you don't have W-2 income. You separated yourself. You don't have 3 years of past income to have leverage against this debt you're about to take on. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, I can't give you a line of credit. I was like, oh, wow. Like that's, cash, line of credit, not having bonding capability at the time, knowing I want to start bidding on federal and municipal jobs that require 100% bonding. I was like, this is nuts. So the dollar amount to starting the company is $60,488. That was the initial cash.
That's very specific.
That is the amount. I remember numbers very well. And I took of that $60,488, I took $57,000, put it in a savings account, and they counted it as collateral against every dollar that I could have in my line of credit. So, for example, if I took $20,000 out of that savings account, my line of credit dropped by $20,000 right away. So I basically self-backed my own line of credit. It was fake, right? So that's where we were. I was lucky enough to meet a phenomenal bonding agent, Peter Forker. So I will give a shout out to Arthur J. Gallagher. It's been a really great company to partner with us. But our surety broker, Peter Forker, been around the business for 50 years. He had heard of me. He'd known my resume. He had known about our company. And he's like, you know what? Regardless of what you have, I'm going to get you involved with Travelers, which is one of the best sureties in the world. I'm going to get you involved with Travelers, and we'll give you, $1 million single project. So that was the start. He gave me $1 million. It took me a year and a half to win our first job. I did everything in the world inside and outside of construction while running the business to actually have enough money to make mortgage payments, which I hid from my family and my wife. She didn't know that we got down to $17,000 left in my bank account to make this thing happen. She didn't know I took out two $35,000 credit cards. So two separate credit cards, at 0% interest in early 2015. She did not know that they were both maxed out, right? I had $60,480. I took $50,000, put it in this $57,000, put it in this line of credit. She didn't realize that I had $70,000 in debt on top of that in these two cards. On my first small local job, she didn't realize that if some way that customer didn't want to pay me exactly by the end of the month for 3 straight months, that I would probably be in bankruptcy. And so that was the start of, you're an entrepreneur, you're probably a really good builder, estimator, or whatever, but that means nothing, right? Having cash on hand, cash is king. You guys hear this. I'm sure you've heard it from numerous entrepreneurs. That was the fright of a year going through a cash turmoil process and saying, I'm going to hoard cash as much as I can as I grow, and wait for the rainy day for some really great things to happen within the company and build up our balance sheet and build up our bonding. And it's happened because we've gone from, $1 million to $500 million in bonding in a very, very short, in 8 years in public contracting. And there's been a ton of lessons learned along the way about how to scale that appropriately. But that's like one of the entrepreneurial things of saying, you asked me, how do I get to that first win? I guess a little story on that is, which you'll appreciate, is first job that we ever won was probably the least hard that I've worked on an estimate ever. I remember the first estimate that I ever worked on as Richard Group, we lost we turned in a $516,000 bid. We lost by $6,000 because of a mistake of one of our competitors. But I worked on that thing for about 35 days straight, 15 hours a week, making every call to subcontractors and self-performance estimating the job. And that happened. We fell second place 6 times before we won a job. It was a $4,284,321 job. We won by $2.1 million. So imagine that. So we've got all these cash strapped in year one, and I'm 37% low on my first bid with Travelers, with my surety agent. Now imagine. I remember making that call after we picked up the phone and said, oh my gosh, they read this public bid out loud and we are just screaming low. And Peter, which has been a really huge proponent of my mental savviness through this whole thing and keeping me off the ledge, was like, do you believe in what you just estimated? And I said, yes, after 3 days of reconfirming everything. He's like, most important thing is, can you make money on the job? And he's like, can you service the customer and make it successful? Will you gain a reputation from it that will let you guys push forward? I said yes to all those things. And long story short, we took the job, made plenty of money, had, $1 million of change orders on the job without asking for extra time. Right. And that's one of our, you're going to ask me of like, what's our flywheel and what really makes us move and run. And, I will tell you early on, it was speed and simplicity and going and building jobs as high quality and safe as possible, as humanly fast as possible, and light speed. And that's what we did. So we saved 3 months on that job, 101 RFIs, over $1 million in changes. And we didn't change period performance on the customer. I said, listen, I'll keep to that same schedule. I'll show you what we could do. And I think that really got us on the map with our initial customer originally.
Wow. How do you take that unbelievable mindset and drive that to your team, right? Obviously in the moment you're living it, right? But 10 years later, 8 years later, hey, like that idea, that mindset needs to still be there, because that's your differentiator, right? Like culture being so huge is certainly, to you pointed out, like how do you drive that feeling home?
Yeah. So, and Justin, I'll talk to you about the attributes that we look at and test in our people, because I think that's really important, because our people are really our secret sauce. But I think the great differentiator in any business, this is really the secret sauce, and it's so simple, is that you have to consistently win in everything that you say you are going to do. Your word is your bond, and you have to consistently win in everything that you say you are going to do. I don't care what that is, in talking to your employees or customers or subcontractors or future joint venture partners. When you say you're going to do those 3 things in a quarter, and you could report back to them and say, I exceeded all of those standards, that allows people to have confidence in you, right? Because words without deeds, words without things that don't happen, become silent. Right. And I think that's something that if there's a superpower that I think I have in motivating people, it's keeping your word as your bond, treating everybody in the path the right way. But when you say you're going to do something for a customer, a subcontractor, if you say that you're going to hire me as a general contractor because we are going to build that job 5 or 10% faster, you better do it. And that consistency, I think, has always been there. And that consistency is the ability to say no in opportunities where you can't do those things, right? Because certain customers, one of the hardest things for an entrepreneur, a budding general contracting company, and this is whether you're $150 million company or $150 billion company, you're going to have customers that are going to throw things at you, and you got to decide whether or not you could follow through with their demands. Right. And really, you got to kind of understand the type of company you want to be as well. Right. There's 2 real companies that are out there in any industry. You're going to be a low cost provider of goods and services. Right. You're going to be a low price company every day of the week. You know what you're getting, and you could go there and rely on that same price, and they're never going to price gouge, and you got it. Right. Public entity, low bid, open rip and read jobs. That's a fantastic way to go, right? But you're always trying to figure out how to cut cost, not just in subcontractors, but you're also trying to do it with your team, right? There's general contractors, something called general conditions. That's the only thing you're really the expert of, is how to manage those general conditions. And as I grow the business, I realized maybe about 5 years ago, well, federal general contracting is phenomenal. It's something I've done really my whole professional life outside of the military. I realized that what we really wanted to be is a best value provider to our customers, right? So, and those people are our perfect customers. And when I get a perfect customer and they fit our criteria, I know that all of my people could go and sit down at the table with them and they could say, hey, this is what you need in your RFP, or this is your vision statement for what you want in that commercial building, or whatever it is. I know we could do X, Y, and Z in our key performance indicators and leading indicators of success and all the analytics that we've been keeping for 10 years. And I know that every time that we do that job, Richard Group's not going to be perfect every time. We're going to have to fight through some difficulties, but we're going to be able to solve those challenges quick. But 90% of the time, we're going to be better than every other general contractor doing that same job for you. And I could tell you that with certainty. So it's backed by analytics and data, and it's backed by being able to say no to a lot of customers that are saying, hey, you could go take 2-3% off this job, right, and bid it and build it, right? And people are like, oh my gosh, I need the work. I need to do this. And those are the jobs where people crash, where there's not a partnership, where there's, developers or commercial folks that get with you and they just need you to be that low guy on that one job, right? That's not necessarily the position we want to be. We want to be somewhat cost efficient, right? But we want to be able to build that building faster and simpler than anybody else, have an easier story through it, making a world-class experience through the process, through our flywheel, through something called our trilogy, which kind of relates to, people, education, technology, like you guys think about. And, so that's why we've been successful with the people that we have, because we're really aligned in the vision, strategy, and the values of how we want to talk to customers and what we could say we're going to do consistently every step.
So you totally reminded me of something, a sign that I saw a long time ago, but it attributes in a lot of different ways in business. You want speed, quality, and price, but you can only pick two, right? If you want speed, if you want great speed and good price,
yeah,
you're not going to get good quality. If you don't, if you want good quality and good price, you're not going to get the speed. And if you want good quality and good speed, you're not going to get a low price, right?
Yeah.
So, exactly what you're talking about, right? You cannot, there's always going to be one of those that's going to quote unquote suffer.
Yeah.
And it's just, what do you value? So I love how you talked about that.
Yeah. I think a company has to decide what is their superpower and push that superpower forward with their customer and work on that. And then, when you're having inadequacies or, say you're super high quality and price and speed, you're like, geez, if that's something that's going to enhance your portfolio and enhance what your customer needs to get, there's so many mega jobs out there. Think about construction, that as we're moving along, as this technological golden age is happening. And I really, we start talking technology and get into it. I just came back. I took a course on site at Harvard with 83 other CEOs from 35 different countries, talking about the advancements in AI and the ethical nature of it. And now I'm in 8 weeks at MIT right now. I'm doing the same thing, the advancements of the AI and how do C-suite level leaders bring that into a company. You got to pick what you could be good at and what's realistic. Data is the thing that tells customers. That's what I don't like about going in and giving pitches to customers. I actually ask customers, I'm like, tell us the data and analytics that you want, because these jobs are becoming so big. Their customers getting into these buildings and occupying them, the numbers are becoming so massive that this commoditization of construction, the cost of it's so small, right? Go say, hey, I'm going to go save you 2 months and $8 million on your price, but it's going to go save them $200-300 million in product per week. Think think about that.
Yeah.
Think about what they want. So building with speed, building with simplicity, while not minimizing quality or safety, is the game. And when you think about it from a cost perspective, it's getting as much stuff into their building as possible for that lowest price, but it's adding the value of the durability of that structure, right? And the maintenance and the operability of their systems and the technology, because it's becoming so vast and so grand. I never seen so many billions of dollars of jobs going on at the same time, these mega data centers and mega manufacturing plants and chip plants, right? And it's fascinating. I could only dream that I wish we were 10 years further down the plane, right? I've got 500 to do in a whole year. Well, some people's got, 5 billion to do in a year and could do one of those jobs. So you have to, what is now and what you keep on having to evolve your perfect customer strategy, to evolve into the long-term plan of who and what you want your organization to be, right? 5 years ago, it was being low price. How do I win a federal government job that's 85% of the time a low price job? There's a lot of novel things you could do to drive down price and still make money and win. And now it's world-class Fortune 500 and 5,000 companies that are going to solve all these global challenges. And they're looking at very sophisticated builders to go in and partner with, because putting up the building and putting up 7 of the same type of building doesn't matter just doing one anymore. There's so much truth telling into their product and what it's going to do for the world that they want you to do 4 $500 million buildings across the country. And it's the consistency of knowing that you could go to any of those locations and being that partner to your commercial customers is where I think that secret sauce is. And I think, and I talked about AI, this partnership between humans and robots is going to really evolve quickly. And it's going to be much faster than typical C-suite level leaders in the AEC industry are looking at. I think they're thinking about it as it's the shiny keys in the room, but are they really doing something about it to implement it in your company and be ahead of the moral and ethical implications for what it does to your people? So I think that's something that has to be thought of as well.
The tech is moving unbelievably fast. Literally yesterday, I spoke to somebody that has a drone company that, like, this is happening. Like, the idea of drone delivery, drone safety, drone, like, in both construction and other capabilities, it's like it is here. It is just waiting for approval in regards to, like, FAA space. Like, that is it. Like, that is the last step, is somebody in Congress signing some stuff. Like, that's where we're at. So when you think of that, and then you take AI, where it's moving, faster than unbelievable. We thought the internet was fast, and like that's like a joke comparatively. Where do you, like, obviously you're going and you're looking into this. Where do you see the future? What does the future look like 5-10 years from now? Yeah,
I'm glad you asked that. A couple of things. Did you see yesterday the robot came out and its face shape and it had muscularity and vascularity and had all the veins going into this, and it was moving so dexterously. It was like unbelievable, the movements and the realism to that thing. And then 2 weeks ago, when Elon put out his new bus and all the robots that came on that were serving drinks at his party and dancing with people, it's really scary for typically knuckle dragging construction people at every level. We've been so technologically behind the last 30 years. The last 30 years a building hasn't grown any more efficiently really than from 1972 or 1982. There are so many moral and ethical implications for people. You're talking faith-based implications. You're talking people that are seeing evolution. You think about the books that we read when we were in school about these, especially in Chicago, and these meatpacking plants, right? And you got thousands of people working in all these horrible, decrepit, conditions. And then eventually 50, 60 years later, you've got robotics, you've got automation taking care of that same sort of process. So people people are scared people are curious and scared at the same time. And I think a little bit of the laugh off about AI is that it's not, it's going to happen, but I don't have to worry about the way I do my work. I think it's going to be the first time, and it's going to come, by listening to all these Harvard and MIT professors. By 2029, you're going to have to make a real choice about what type of work you do. The companies that you work for are going to be really good about putting you at the right seat on the bus. They're going to have to take these really smart people that have done fantastic work and might have been 10, 20 years in the same company, and looking at retraining them to hopefully partner with AI and robotics, because it is just so vastly more efficient than the human brain. And when you're going to start seeing computers and robots that could actually feel a bit of empathy, right? Because you're putting like neurotransmitters from our brain and it's replicating those things, right? We're getting to scary stuff for really good people and for humanity. So I'm glad you asked the question, because 2 weeks ago, so it's been 3 weeks ago, we do a junior leader summit every year. 2 years ago, took them to Jackson Hole, and we asked some really important questions about Richard Building Model, which is our proprietary project management software in-house, and how agile it is and where it is going to take us in the future. And we rafted down the Snake River. We hiked up to the peak right next to, the Grand Teton. This year, we just got back, and the whole thing was what I asked the 14 people that went on the trip, and we went to Zion National Park, and we stopped every mile. We stopped every mile of the trip and had a 15, 20-minute discussion, and we ramped it up. And the first question was, is AI and its automation and robots good for Richard Group's future? Just left it at that. We walked the mile. People talked for that first question, and we got done with the first mile. So we're probably 5,000 feet up. We started at 3,000 feet. And I would tell you it was 7-7. 7, it's positive, and 7 is negative. And you had people at both ends of the spectrum, really hard lefts and really hard rights. And then you had the centralists, kind of like political span. And you start to unwind. And just like anything that's new, right? If you think about introducing anything new and novel, right?
Change is hard.
At West Point, I was in leadership and management. That was my major. It was the first management major at West Point. And you learn that in good inherent change through an organization, sometimes it takes 2 to 4 years. And that's little change. You start looking at change that happened 5 years ago in software and technology, and that some of these technologists are putting out there. It can't do a 100th or 1,000th of what these softwares are putting out in a day right now. And that's a real challenge, that it's so big, and the AI robotics, that monster is so big and so scary and staring at kids in the face coming out of college as new project engineers. And then think about your workforce, these people that have been there 30 years, and they're 55 to 60-year-old superintendents that you've just taught them over the last 6 years how to use Excel and how to use Microsoft products and those suites, right? And oh, by the way, look at how to use P6 software, and go look at cost and resource loading, and look at leading lagging measures of a critical path. Those were things that took years to get people to learn. And now we're asking them to talk to chatbots and going on open AI platforms, whatever they are, and create things within seconds. That's it's so exciting, and it's so problematic at the same time. So we're going the second mile. And the next question is, are you okay with me as CEO thinking about inserting AI and robotics into our company? And if not, please let me know. We get to that. Now we're at like 6,500 feet. And I said, what's the real problem here? And one of the project engineers, this is the real conversation. One project engineer, he's leading a $65 million job of ours in Boston area. He goes, do you know I've been taking all of our submittals? So we're just talking about things because this guy is super amped. He actually was wearing the glasses that had the AI prompter inside of it. I forgot. I think there might have been like Ray-Bans.
Meta? Oh, okay.
They're like, yeah, but they weren't I think they're all having their same thing, but some sort of meta source. And he's like, hey, Meta, and he's asking this thing questions. And he looked at all the other young men and women that were up on that hill. He goes, do you know? Because some of them were so against it. He's like, do you know I've been putting in all of our submittals in the Chat GPT, and I've been asking Chat GPT based off of various prompts of us, and from the perspective of I'm a quality control manager, Chat GPT, and I want you to check this submittal against every submittal that you see on the web that deals with the Corps of Engineers, and will you fix and make corrections and red lines on it? He's like, do you know I could do that in like 3 minutes? And do things that on one submittal used to take me like 2 weeks. So now all the scared people that are like, well, it's a moral and ethical consideration. I'm Christian. There's God aspects that I'm worried about, and which we have to unpack as well, right? But then they're like, oh my gosh, it can make my job that much easier. And you start getting those conversations. So then the conversation of productivity and moral and ethical considerations starts to collide. And we go on the next mile, and I say, think about this. Think about if we have a technology code of conduct in this company, and I ask all of you, what are the guardrails that the 7 that you don't want this anywhere near? Richard, if I were to ask you about these guardrails and what they are, I want to know at 7,000 feet. So we get up to 7,000 feet, and they're huffing and puffing. You can see they've been talking. There's a couple people getting a little heated up there, and they start talking about these things. So we get to that spot. I'm like, all right, let's start talking about the guardrails. So we started with a 26-year Corps of Engineer commander. We talked to a 28-year-old junior superintendent, the things that they were considering. Hey, one of the considerations, a major consideration that every company CEO should be thinking about, is my job safe if we introduce this technology into the company at a very simplistic level? Think about that question. Think about somebody that's been a quality control manager or superintendent for 8 years, and they've been busting their butt going to every single job, and they've been great for their customers. And then realizing that there's going to be a software or AI or something that they could either think of as partnering with it or thinking about that's my enemy, and that could possibly do a job better than I can and explain to the customer how that thing gets built, or our subcontractors so much more efficiently and eloquently as me. Will that kill me off? Because that's what they were thinking. And I'll tell you, the same person that said submittals, I could get them in 3 minutes. One of the things I asked them I said, listen, open up your mind. This is an amnesty box conversation. If you're doing something so good, I want you to share it. They're like, oh man, I don't have to worry about my job. I don't have to worry about my own teammates catching up to me. And that allowed this one guy to go and say, I'm doing this on ChatGPT. And they're like, I'm okay. But it was like a secret sauce thing I've been doing the last 3 months, because he was worried about everybody catching up and knowing how to do that. I said, that's not where we're at. If we're a team and we're going to grow technology in here, we got to treat robots and AI, generative AI. We have to start teaching it and training it to have the cultural same. They might be really good technically. Now help them be culturally aligned with who we are moving this thing forward. I will tell you, once we got to mile, and we did 12 miles that day, we didn't do any discussions the last 2 miles because we were really having a hard time getting to the peak. But we got to 14-0, 14 yes, 0 no, and came up with a strict one-pager guideline of these are the guardrails. We got the same team. We said, oh, here's another thing that we said, because this is important. When you do something new in a company, you need to have a steering committee, and you need to have a resource for other people in the company that haven't been able to work it out like we did over a course of 3 days, to go and sit with a panel and group of people at the company and work out what their concerns are. A concern isn't an issue. It's not a problem. It's not bad, right? When we look at things and these micro failures that people have in a company, it's not a bad thing. I want us to fail small, to lean forward much faster. But there's going to be a lot of different questions because the generative AI is going to advance even further. Elon's robots are going to get better and better and better. It's coming whether we like it or not. Politically, governance is going to trail that so much slower, right? Like us saying, right, our government's saying you could do this or you can't do that. We can't, that bureaucracy can't think as fast as what technologists are doing in this industry. So not only does our little steering committee in our company need to do something about it, we need to have this global community of construction engineering and architect leaders that could come together and say, this is the moral imperative, this is the moral high ground, this is the moral right of what we could do with these robots. It's coming whether we like it or not, but let's be aligned in what those guardrails are so that not everybody's off the reservation, right? We gotta hone in on this. So those are just a few thoughts of, you know, your original question, and it kind of led to what we were doing with technology.
Oh man, I'm so glad we asked this question.
Yeah.
Thank you for I am so glad that you had considerable thought and actual, really an outing, you know, around this, because this is a question that is very hard for the built world. I think that they don't really know how to answer this, and I don't think there is a right answer yet. So I had written down something on my whiteboard almost 3 years ago. I just want you to listen to this.
Yeah.
In the world of AI, knowledge is free and software is nearly free. We'll be limited by our ability to ask the right questions, our time and capacity to consume knowledge, and our ability to apply it. What do you think of that?
I'm going to ask you this, and maybe it's going to go up in your whiteboard, and then you get to ask yourself the next question. What if I were to tell you, because this is fact, I shouldn't say it's fact, but this is predictability from MIT and Harvard and all the technologists I've talked to, by 2029, virtually every content moving forward on the World Wide Web is going to be created by generative AI, by chatbots, by robots. They are not going to have human form. Almost all of the major content in white papers or anything else is going to be coming from the amalgamation of the thoughts of all these wonderful thinkers and innovators combined. That's what they believe. That's the supernova of the web and when it's going to happen. That's when ChatGPT is not just chat 100.0. This is that collide.
So where it's actually being generated. So there's still a human aspect behind it. Look, English is the new cool. It used to be there were a lot of people that did not like English class. English is now the new cool. Okay. Just speaking in terms of classes. Okay. And I'm a math guy too, by the way. So, you know, data is the actual key to what is valuable. How that data gets interpreted is literally context. Okay, so you can have a white paper and you ask it one question to write something about it or to interpret those results or whatnot. And all you have to do is change one or two words and the context changes. So I would argue you are getting to the point faster, right? And if I'm the creator that's helping behind the generative AI that's creating the white paper, if I don't like what it says, I could quickly rewrite it faster than if I actually typed it out rewriting. So I can get to an end result way faster in the context of what I'm trying to actually communicate. If anything, I would argue this is going to teach us to communicate better, because communication in the built world is okay at best. Okay? Because to human is to err. And if we remove some of the errors in communication, all we're doing is we are now the editors of our communication, right? And we're going, that's what I wanted to say. Wouldn't it cause less problems in the world that we live in?
I'm glad that we're having this debate and this conversation because it deals a lot with this. I I am worried about my young project engineers because, right, I'm just the construction guy. I'm worried about my young project engineers learning how to think deeply and how to grow and educate themselves and learn from these prompts. Because what you're talking about is a prompt, right? In the large, you're talking LLM, you're talking large language models. And what I'm concerned about, I'm not saying there's a lot of opportunity in this concern. I'm concerned about project engineers and young people coming out of college where they are just learning more and more how to prompt upon prompt. Remember when we learned something before the TI-82 calculator, when we had professors.
TI-83, yep.
We had TI-81, yep. 82, 83, there's 79 before that. I mean, they're all different variations, right, of this thing growing out. Remember taking whiteboards or chalkboards and actually doing the work. I worry about the efficiency of prompting and humans having the real chance, things and thought processes and how people learn, how they teach themselves, how they coach, teach, and mentor, and how they become leaders. If you have so much information at the click of a button, right? How many times do you sit at a dinner with friends and somebody says, well, you hear a story and they say something and you're like fact checking them right on the spot. You pull out your iPhone and you say, no, that song, Ice Ice Baby was actually 1986, dude. It wasn't and it wasn't on CD first and it wasn't 1989. So you're wrong, and it's like, aha, that was kind of funny. I'm so worried about people not being able to work out in their head. There is something awesome about that next step of, hey, I've learned all these technical skills. I've got my toolkit filled to do my job and run the robots and run the generative AI. I'm so concerned about them working out the process of how they want to think because of companies that are just profit-centered and driven, which is you have to have profit center first, that they don't want to invest in that because the technology is already sitting behind a screen. They don't want
what
to.
What you're talking about is critical thinking.
You're talking.
But that poses the question of like right now, like how you're building out a team, right? Like just as in general, right? So say you have new CFO or new VP of Ops or these things. Like how are you then seeing those leaders? Like because you're putting leaders together to help the team underneath them grow. How do you see that? How do you build the team currently? Like what's that look like now? And is your future thinking of 2029 or beyond affecting then that decision making process?
Justin, I like the way you asked that question. I would say because we are in a technological golden age in construction, I would like people, depending on their current skill set as we're moving into this, to somewhat silo themselves into their current capacity and look at all that data in the jobs and roles they have to fill. The part where you're going to have massive frustration is if you have a 30-year CFO or vice president of operations in a room and you have a 24-year-old that knows how to prompt smoother, more efficiently, thinking that they've got the experience factor on top of that. So with data, right? With data and knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. We grew up before computers. Knowledge is power. This is knowledge. Now you have knowledge.
Not without applicability.
You have knowledge without even thinking about having to have knowledge. You could pull it up in front. You're going to be able to pull it up on glasses that are 3D as you're talking to somebody. There's a concern that I have with the AI leadership and human leadership. Poise in our younger generation that after COVID would like that $15,000 raise for every little deed that they've done right over the course of their 6 months. That they want to be a PE and go from a PD to APM to a project manager in 2 weeks when it used to take 2 decades. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm saying this in the healthiest way because I'm talking to you like I talk to my project engineers. I tell my project engineers every day, you're the smartest project engineers that ever stepped face into a construction business. But It doesn't mean that you have the experience to lead the people that have come from before you, right? But you've got this really awesome technology tool to help you tell truth and to help you align data. And think about this. In my own company, one of the things that I said at the beginning, and this is before ChatGPT came out, one of our 3 wildly important goals, so our main company goals going into the year, and this all got disrupted, was having Richard Group move into one single source of truth in all of the technology that we own, because the company ran in like 68 different spreadsheets that were dynamic and fantastic and, no code and like all this stuff that's happening. And then ChatGPT and OpenAI came out. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I just worked 4 months on building that out in Azure in a data set, in a data table on the back end. And I could have done this in like 3.2 seconds. Right? So I guess what we're talking about is we still at the end of the day have to build a perfect building for our customer. And it's so exciting technologically what's happening. What I think we all need to sit back as C-suite level people in construction companies, and even more so in the smartest of engineers that are coming to us, is figuring out what your long-term plan is, what you want to be in your life, 3 to 5 years, right? PE doesn't need to go tell me, Jed, I want to go run one of your groups when we're $3 billion and run that $1 billion group. I want them to start thinking, okay, a project engineer takes I want to be a project engineer, and it's going to take those 3 years. We got to tell them that's the pact. If you're a little bit better, maybe it takes 2.5 years. If you're a little slower, it's 4. And oh, by the way, the best project manager doesn't mean you were not the worst project engineer. There's different trades and different tasks that we have to align you on. But the most important thing, guys, is when we sit you in the front of a customer, and the customer looks at you and asks you the toughest questions, that you could solve those challenges as clearly and simply as possible and as fast as possible. And getting those people aligned with this technology leadership, because it's going to be technology leadership and manual, just good old what management and leadership has been in the past. Because there is going to be a knowledge and experience gap of all the youngsters having it at the palm of their fist right away. Right now, I'm going to get you that answer, Mr. CEO, or I asked ChatGPT to do this, and because I was able to do this faster than somebody who's been in the business 20 years, I'm therefore better. The world is still going to work in the people that work underneath you think you're technologically great, that you treat us fantastic, right? And that you got vision and strategy to move us forward. So they still have to align, and there's still got to have, the younger generation has to have this grace with the upper generation that has had that experience but haven't used the technology in the past. And forging those two models together, I think we are going to have a faster building eventually out in the field, right? Because we're teaching our 55, 60, 65-year-old superintendents that haven't seen it to use it and partner with it, and have those project engineers help those guys enhance how they talk to subcontractors, how they look at means and methods out the job, how they inspect the work, right? Because we're going to eventually have goggles on, and it's going to scan, and it's going to pick up every fault up in an interstitial space of all the MEP systems. We don't even have to know it ourselves. It's going to know it for us. But what happens when the battery's off? What happens when the power goes out? What happens, right?
Yep.
What happens? And so that's where good leadership comes into play and tempers the expectations of our technologists that are project engineers alongside it. And I do think it's going to come to a really good solution. I do think we're going to start putting up buildings 20, 30% faster than we ever have before for all the advanced manufacturing and robotics that I'm also getting into that we could talk about outside of the actual job site itself. So those are my thoughts on it.
It's the balance, right? It's balance of, great people that have experience to do things, that have been there, with then the tool set, the advanced tool set of tech, right? I mean, you have you can't just take the person that can do the thing in 3 minutes that took somebody, 5 years ago 4 weeks to do, because the tools are so different. So That makes tons of sense. I want to ask one more question before we get to our last question. So Richard Group, or Richard, has come to a new brand, right? You've rebranded, and Colleen and her team have been awesome, and everybody else that worked on it, it looks great. But why now? Why was now the right time to change, not change who you are, certainly, but show the world a different point of view? Yeah,
and Colleen Richardson's phenomenal. I'm so proud that I was able to bring her over to this team, and she did a great rebrand and commercial. She's partnered with the Blackhawks. We've been a sponsor now for a couple of years with Chicago Blackhawks, and we've expanded that to our San Diego office, and we're partnering with local universities there. We've got a lot of athletes in this. Athletic component things are a big part of what we're going to be in the future. But I will tell you this: when I was in the basement in October 2014 at my house, and I appreciate my veteran status, my veteran background, I never, ever, ever wanted to think of that designation as a handout destination. It's so in my basement thinking about the growth. My company was writing the original business plan. It wasn't use my veteran business status. It was not the destination to sit as a small business general contractor doing federal contracts because of this veteran small business designation. And it's not a brag or too proud or whatever. I wanted to build this company because of the culture I wanted to bring to it. And instead of staying in the military, I've to lead a platoon of 40 people and, be an executive officer of 300 people, be on the operations staff of a 2,000 person organization. I enjoyed leading and listening and solving the challenges of more and more people, right? And just so happens that more and more people leads to more and more revenue typically in a company. So I wanted us to be a general contractor. The original thought was to be a $1 billion company in 25 years. And now it's be a $10 billion company in 20 years. It's not, we're going to do it much faster. So Richard, in its first 10 years, was learning how to be a general contractor, being really successful at it for certain customers, mainly federal business customers. And our mission, build with purpose, live with passion is our tagline. Mm-hmm. We're purpose builders. We aren't what we've recognized in bringing so many talented individuals and the way we test people, and seeing the attributes that we test, and it's a lot of work to come work for this company, which is awesome. It's a gauntlet, right, of great gratitude and greatness, and greatness is IQ and EQ testing. We have all these wonderful people that have serviced so many great customers that they care about. So as long as they are building to solve the world's greatest challenges, our perfect customer is a professional, no matter what type of professional, and the building or structure they want to build is so that they could go bring their product and solve the world's challenges, make it more efficient. And if that means figuring out how to use the robots that are sitting in our warehouse right now to build faster timber truss systems that are 30% faster and more efficient, which leads to a reduction in costs and gets people's house down from $250,000 down to $150,000, so it's more affordable for more Americans, that's something I could rally around. That's not something necessarily in federal government contracting, right? So if one of these technologists has the next SaaS software or the next robot that could go hang drywall by itself so that my people don't get injured that are carpenters, man, and they want me to go build their robotics factory, that's greatness. That's, to me, greatness. So it's just natural that we've been in one segment, we've been in one market called building. And now we're going to go build out the segments of building. We've been awarded $600 million worth of healthcare. We've done tons of that healthcare with veterans and veteran facilities. I'm been so honored that our people are so honored and gracious about it. And so are the patients. When a patient comes out which we've seen in hospitals we've been in for 7 years. And a patient comes out, it's like, man, I had to wait like 4 months or 5 months to get in and do this MRI scan. I got this one in like 2 weeks. That's when the power happens. It's not the bottom line. You have to be efficient in the bottom line to build scalability of companies, to have the opportunities to bring more people into your culture. For us making these acquisitions to bring more people into what we think the vision is for what construction can be, which is a partnership of humans and robots moving together to build world-class structures. You can't necessarily do that all in a fairly bureaucratic government space. We're not leaving it. It's going to be there. But what you've seen in those commercials and our new website is, power generation, right? Renewables, right? We're so lucky that we got into Biden's EV, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We're in 28 different locations around the United States, surveying and getting them prepared for their 2035 mandate to take all the gas guzzlers and turn them into electric vehicles at every base around the country. This is real, but there's so many challenges trying to get power to those sites, and you start seeing the customer working out these challenges everywhere. So we believe that we are very fast and dynamic, and that we're technologically forward and focused, and that we got these supremely talented, ethical, and moral leaders that are going to lead construction into its golden age, working with and partnering with whatever technology is. Because it was AI first, then became generative AI and large language models that we had talked about, prompting and picking out different steps in the prompt. Who knows what it's going to be called in 3 years? We just know it's got to move forward. And if that enhances the lives of people and makes their work, live, play scenario better, then that's what a tombstone worthy life could be for me when I hang it up and say, hey, our people did this for construction, and we've kind of etched ourselves into history. And that's the next 10 years. First 10 years we learned, the next 10 years we're teaching.
I love how you summed that up. I wish we could talk more and record it. We're just not the Joe Rogan podcast just yet. So we got to bring it down to our last question. So Jed, if you were to go back 20 years, what would you tell yourself? Well, learning lessons, what would you impose upon your 20-year younger self?
It's a real easy thing, and I wish I had a more eloquent way of saying it, but be the average of your 5 best friends. That's your 5 best business friends. That's your 5 best friends outside, because we weren't even to delve into like wellness and spirituality and all the other things that we do in this company. Our values, gratitude, resilience, excellence, adventure, and transparency. Those are our values in the company. Adventure is so important. So if you could surround yourselves with people that live that passion with you, and when you got to go cry on a shoulder or if you even want to boast because you did something really awesome and you don't want to go showcase that awesomeness to the world, but you want to just go sit there and enjoy it with somebody that's been through the humble process of entrepreneurship or growing a company. And that's for everybody. If you're not, so Aristotle, what is happiness, right? What is happiness in life? And it's progress. It's continual progress and continual learning and continually making yourself better in whatever respect that is, whatever your passion is. And so that's what I would say. And I'm not saying that because I didn't have those. I wasn't the average of my 5 best friends. I'm just continually hunting. I'm not leaving my old best friends alone, right? I'm not leaving. They're not going out to the pastures. I'm going to live to death with them. But I am absolutely needing to sit in a room with a conversation that makes us think like we're thinking today. That's progress, and that's human progress, not robotic progress. And and I want to do it sitting somewhere in a house out on that river, just below that mountain basin at some point. I want to be able to take people out there and have conversations till 3 a.m. in the morning talking about what's really important in life. And that's
one of those days. I hope to do that with you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate this. I appreciate you giving me the mic, and I think we talked about construction.
I think we did.
I'm glad we talked AI because I don't think it's being thoughtfully promoted or presented in our space. And if you know how to connect me to those sorts of people and have more of these sorts of conversations, it's so completely necessary before it gets beyond our comprehension, especially in the AEC space. And I know you guys are huge proponents of that. And from what you guys are doing on the technology side and cybersecurity and all the things that you guys and that we're looking at together on, I think that's the next step in construction.
Beautiful. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to throw all your social stuff in the show notes. No problem there. But if somebody want to get a hold of Richard or you specifically, is there a best way to do that?
Yeah, I didn't like LinkedIn at the beginning. I've been told and promoting that I do all my own writing on LinkedIn. I would ask that people go, follow me and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I typically answer almost every person. I've got a train ride into work and back home, and I do it every single day tied to that. I think that's the best place to start. And the power to say no is also important. So if there's try to get sold about 1,000 things a day. So if there's something that's meaningful that will add to us having a better, more sophisticated project, I'd love to talk to you and collaborate with you. And that's what I would ask. And then Colleen and Sophia are in our marketing department. If there's some other collaboration in buildings or thought processes, that's where I would direct them.
No, totally. Right. This has been awesome. I'm sure our listeners had an amazing time, as I know me and Will did. And usually I say adios, but it feels right to say keep chasing the buffalo or keep chasing the bison, Jed.
Yeah, let's go. Keep going. Keep going. Everybody's got to keep going. There's so much more to learn and accomplish.
All right. That's it for today. So until next time, adios.
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 Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.
Scale.